5-year-old killed after getting hit by a car at 11:44 at night on April 26th.
Say, this is Maya. Maya done got out the car, then walked to the front. Maya's twerking, twerking, twerking. They run her over.
They say trust is fragile. One moment it's the fabric that binds, your friends, your laughter, your late-night confidences. The next moment, it can be the thing that shatters, leaving consequences no apology can undo. This is the story of Amaya Cunningham, a young woman whose final night will test every idea we have about betrayal, truth, and justice. Imagine April 26, 2025, a warm night in Forest Park, Georgia. Amya, 25, full of energy, full of dreams, wrapped in the kind of joy that looks safe, even inevitable. She had reasons to smile, her younger sister's prom, her aunt's birthday, and the promise of beauty school ahead. Friends around her, music in the air. She believed she was stepping into an evening she'd always remember for its laughter. But beneath that laughter, something whispered that this night wouldn't be like the others. Amya texted a friend. The vibes were off. A simple phrase, a small alarm, something inside her unsettled. She didn't know at that moment how loudly that alarm would echo back. She gathered with people she trusted, friends, confidants. Among them, Alexandria Larkin. Alexandria was someone Amya had known, someone she believed had her back. Others in the group were Mickey, Deja, T. The lines between fun and fear hadn't been drawn yet. They pre-partied as many do. Music, laughter, videos taken, conversations filled with promise. But tension, ever so slight, moved at the edges, smiles that didn't stay, words left unsaid. When Amya pulled away from the group to dance in the pre-party, someone caught it on video, her joy, yes, but also the nervous watchfulness in her eyes. They headed out in a convoy of cars, Alexandria in a black SUV, Amya in a silver car with friends following behind, others ahead. The air was heavy with expectation, the roads with lights that flickered like questions. There was a navigation misstep, missed exit. The front car doubled back, others stayed on, a small fracture in what had seemed a unified night. The group's cohesion slipped. They separated unknowingly into paths that night's outcomes would depend on.
Everybody was in fact ready to go. Maya, okay, he shows me on video that he had a friend who was going to drive. So none of them had to lap up or anything. He thought they were all going to ride together. So his friend who had this red truck, he told his friend, hey, take your subwoofers out of your car so all the girls can fit in your car comfortably, okay? Nobody will have to lap up. He has it on video. Him literally at his back door, his friend pulled his truck up to the back door and he's taking the subwoofers out. And then here's Maya on this side with the bottle of Don Julio. Lit, my girl twerking, having fun. Okay, having a blast. Okay? And so at this point, as he's moving the subwoofers, he says they get into the car, but then he looks up and he's like, where's Maya? And he's like, all I could guess is she went and got in the car with the other girls. So mind you, this red truck had pulled around to the back door to be closer to take the subwoofers into the house. So he was saying, I think Maya had went to the front and got in the car with those girls. He said, so we pulled up to the front of the complex and we all had, lined up and drove out together. So it was him in the red truck with his other friend. It was this black Jeep with the girl who now we know her name is Alex. She's in this Jeep by herself. And then we have this silver car, which has Maya, the girl in the black, and the girl in the white in it. Okay, so from there, they all leave together. They're all on the interstate. Maya texts him, we're right behind you. Maya's also asking him, I'll insert the text messages. She's also asking him, hey, what are they going to have to pay to get in? How much money are they going to have to spend? And he's letting them know, hey, all the girls got to pay 20, but I got you and I got one of your friends. Okay, cool. At some point while they're driving there, Maya texts him and says, I should have rode with you. Okay, so he tells me that while they're in the front driving, because he's the first car, the red, the black, then the silver, he misses the exit, but the black car remembers the exit, takes the exit, and the silver follows behind. So they had all gotten off on the right exit. He says they realize they missed the exit. He starts to turn around, him and his friend, okay? This is his version of events, okay? This is all that he knows.
Amya's car followed behind the black SUV into a dim intersection, Forest Parkway and Frontage Road. Stoplights, turning cars, shadows dancing on pavement. And then she stepped out of the car, into the space between them, and she danced, just for a moment. It wasn't planned. It was spontaneous. It was Amya. What happened next is painful to think of, yet harder to forget. The black SUV moved. There was impact. Amya was struck, dragged. In the silence that follows the breaking of something precious, she fell. Emergency lights, screams. The pavement held evidence, tire marks, blood, and a life gone too soon. First responders arrived. Amya was found gravely injured. They fought for her life, multiple efforts, every resource. She was taken to Grady Memorial Hospital, but she didn't survive. In the hours that followed, the official story was tightly controlled. A woman had been hit, a tragic accident. Investigators initially ruled out malice or wrongdoing. No charges, no admission of fault. The driver, who in moments would become central, was said to be unknown to the victim. A stranger, an unfortunate misfortune. But the narrative was already fraying, because people had seen more. Friends claimed to know who was behind the wheel. Social media had video, footage that showed Amya stepping from her car, dancing in front of a vehicle she knew. The identity of that vehicle was questioned before the news even made it official. The public was not willing to accept accident, no foul play without proof. Pressure built. Vigils formed. The family demanded answers. What did the surveillance footage show? What did the video recordings from friends reveal? Where did the driver disappear to, and why was there a delay in accountability? Then came the breakthrough. Nearly 3 weeks after the incident, law enforcement arrested Alexandria Larkin, first-degree vehicular homicide, leaving the scene of an accident. These weren't small charges. Prosecutors believed the evidence indicated more than just careless driving, that what had at first been dismissed as tragedy may have involved a conscious decision, or at least gross recklessness. But even with the arrest, many questions remained unanswered. What exactly had Amya seen or felt just before stepping out? What were the words in the messages she sent? What did witnesses say, and who was silent? How had the video evidence shifted the truth? After the grief, the questions. After the outrage, the search for evidence. Because for Amya's family and for the public watching, what mattered wasn't just that a life was lost, it was how. Why? Who was responsible? When the video first surfaced, footage from a traffic camera showing a vehicle striking someone, many assumed that this was the final piece. But police sources said early on that more corroborating evidence was needed. Eyewitness interviews, phone logs, surveillance video, forensics. Investigators had to map out a timeline minute by minute to counter claims that this was merely an accident. One of the most important exhibits, text messages. Amya had sent messages earlier that night to a friend, telling them the vibes were off. Those words, at first dismissed, became crucial in establishing what she felt, not just what she did. Investigators sought to understand whether that message was psychological forewarning or whether something more concrete caused her unease. They also examined phone locations and cellular data. Where were the friends at particular times? Could their phones verify their positions relative to the scene? These pieces began to align around the intersection where Amya would make her last spontaneous move. Meanwhile, surveillance cameras at Forest Parkway and Frontage Road were reviewed. The video showed Amya stepping out, dancing, then the moment of impact. It was clean, stark, and unforgiving. That footage undermined the idea that she was just a random pedestrian caught in traffic. Someone in a vehicle recognized her. Someone she recognized. Prosecutors would later say that this evidence pointed to recognition, not accident. Another thread, witness statements. At first, some friends said they didn't see the crash happen or that they thought the victim was a stranger. Others later broke that silence, giving accounts that contradicted earlier versions. One witness reportedly saw the black SUV traveling behind Amya's car, saw her dancing just a step in front of it. Another said there was no visible braking before impact. These contradictions would become central in court. Was there warning? Was there reaction? Or was there recklessness? Then the issue of leaving the scene. If someone hits a person, especially someone they know, the law typically requires them to stop, render aid, call emergency services. In this case, the driver, Alexandria Larkin, did not remain at the scene in the way people might expect. Investigators contended that there was a delay in identifying the driver, in acknowledging the connection between her and the victim. That delay became part of the prosecution's case. Negligence extended into not just physical action, but moral responsibility and duty. Prosecutors filed first-degree vehicular homicide. Why first degree? Because they argued that Alexandria's actions went beyond a mere careless mistake. The evidence suggested not only that Amya was recognized and seen by the SUV, but that there was no decisive effort to avoid hitting her. That both the behavior of the vehicle immediately before impact and the actions afterward raised serious doubt about accident claims. Meanwhile, leaving the scene compounded the severity. But legal investigators also had to anticipate the defense. What counterarguments would emerge? What ambiguities did the case still contain? One element, line of sight. The defense claimed that visibility at the intersection might have been reduced, that lighting and vehicle angles obscure what happened exactly. Alexandria's legal team pointed to distance, shadows, possibly even environmental factors that could interfere. Glare, angle of headlights, glare off wet roads. If vision was obstructed, then reaction time matters more, and what seemed reckless could be argued as lapse or misjudgment.
This is his version of events, okay? This is all that he knows. So he ends up getting back on the interstate, getting off at the right exit. He says that when he got to the end of that exit, they see like, oh shit, somebody's in the middle of the ground. Like, he's like, I don't know what happened. I'm thinking somebody hit somebody. He said, but then I see the silver car and I'm like, damn, hold on. Did one of these bitches like hit somebody? Like, he said he didn't sure, or he didn't know. He said he got out the car recording immediately. He didn't know what was going on. He just thought, he did not think it was Maya. He started walking up and literally he saw it was Maya and he started breaking down, crying hysterically. He's just distraught at this point, So he tells me that at this point, the police arrive. They revive Maya 4 times. They get her back up. She get her back up again, And so after the 4th time, they pronounced her deceased, okay? So at this point, he says that the police are interviewing the girls who were there. But he's like, their stories, like, first of all, he said he was very distraught and he was kind of listening, but not too focused because he's watching them load her onto this stretcher. He is in distress. He says, but when the girls are telling the story, he's like, they're not, let me speed it up, okay? To let you know what he's pretty much was trying to say. Pretty much he said, after this had all happened and they pronounced her dead, they said they were going to take her to the morgue. He said, so I didn't really know if I should go to the hospital, what I should do. He said, to be honest, I went to the club. I think he might work at this club sometimes. He said, I went to the club. I got another bottle. He said, I'm going to be honest with you, gorgeous. He said, I drink. He said, I didn't know how to grieve, so I just went, got another bottle, and started drinking my life away because I saw my friend on the ground, And I told him, because I've seen his comments, a lot of his comments, and even on my video, there's comments of people talking shit about him still going to the club. You cannot tell somebody how to grieve. You can't. You cannot tell anybody how to grieve because, first of all, you're not in their position. And second of all, everybody grieves differently. Okay, so he says he goes to the club, and while he's sitting there, he starts to think about, where's the girl with the black truck and the pink outfit on, right? So then he remembers that while he was sitting there and the police were there, that nobody had mentioned this black truck and this girl in the pink. So he starts thinking. He says that he had, drank his couple of drinks and went home. He said at 3 a.m. the investigator called and he said, hey, I forgot something. Did anybody tell you about this black truck and this girl in the pink that they were following her? She was the truck behind ours. But when I got to the scene, she was gone, nowhere to be found. But he was so distraught by what just happened, he wasn't even, in his head saying, oh, there was this person, da, da, da. He was out of it. But he started to think like, hold on, where the fuck is this bitch? Which made him start to realize, I didn't hear none of them girls mention that girl in the black truck with her pink outfit on. So his mind is running, So that's what I got from him. He just was like, I pulled up after whatever happened and happened. He said, now that I've seen the video, he said that girl in that fucking black truck, she fled the scene. He said, and those other girls didn't say shit about her from what he said. Okay.
Another element, speed and braking. Was Alexandria's SUV traveling at speed that precluded stopping? Was there enough time to perceive danger and respond? Forensic investigators looked for skid marks, brake light activation, and looked for damage to the vehicle consistent with sudden braking or jamming on the brakes. In some reports, no visible skid marks appeared before impact, which raised more questions. Did the driver press the brake? Was there any attempt at evasive maneuver? The timeline itself came under intense scrutiny. Investigators established that Amya was struck around 11:44 p.m., but what about moments before and after? When did friends last see her dance? When did she step out? When did the vehicle begin to move? And after impact, what were the actions of the people in proximity? Was there an immediate call to 911? Who spoke with police first? Who knew what when? One of the most painful parts of the case was what people didn't do. Supposed friends who were present gave statements that changed over time. Some said originally that Amya was unknown to the driver, or that they didn't see who was driving. Later, as pressure mounted and video circulated, those very friends acknowledged recognizing Alexandria. Others failed to mention key details in initial interviews: black SUV, dancing, position of Amya in relation to the traffic lane, etc. These omissions and inconsistencies became powerful in court, used to undermine credibility or establish that certain facts couldn't be trusted without cross-examination. In the court of public opinion, there was a turning moment when the viral video could no longer be ignored. Local news outlets published the surveillance footage. The public saw what investigators were piecing together: Amya dancing, stepping from her vehicle, the black SUV following, the SUV accelerating. The visual record matched what some witnesses claimed. The visuals contradicted statements that this was a stranger or a random pedestrian. Public pressure played a role: advocacy from Amya's family, protests, social media posts. The mismatch between community perceptions and official statements weighed heavily. Authorities had initially not filed charges. Two news reports from early May 2025 noted that no arrests had been made despite the video evidence. Then on May 17, 2025, Alexandria Larkin was arrested in Forest Park and charged with deadly vehicular homicide in Amya's death, according to local law enforcement. The shift from no charge to first degree indicates that the investigation yielded evidence sufficient to meet the higher legal threshold. The prosecutors argued that the evidence showed Alexandria not only struck Amya, but that she did so knowing someone was in front of the vehicle, that there was recognition, that Amya was not just in traffic, that the sequence of events, no brake lights, lack of evasive maneuver, the location of injury, pointed to a standard of recklessness inconsistent with mere accident. The defense continued to maintain distance, both literal and legal. Their strategy involved emphasizing uncertainties, visibility, reaction time, environmental conditions. They contested whether it could be proven beyond reasonable doubt that the driver saw Amya in time, or that she had the ability to avoid the impact. Also challenged were the witness statements for consistency and reliability. But one piece of evidence that stood out: video from traffic cameras. The footage was clear enough, in the eyes of prosecutors, to support identification of the vehicle, its movements, and the positioning of Amya relative to that vehicle at key moments. The record shows that Amya stepped out, danced, and the SUV followed a trajectory that did not suggest it was stopping. The video data forced questions about why there had been no braking or evasive move before impact. There was also forensic medical evidence. The nature of her injuries, drag marks consistent with being run over, tire tracks on her body, wounds showing she was in front of the vehicle long enough to be struck decisively, suggested that the vehicle did more than graze her. It moved in a way that left no ambiguity about the contact. That contested contact became central to the legal framing of the charges: vehicular homicide. The weeks that followed Amya's death were heavy with grief and whispers of justice. As evidence hardened and the public outcry grew, the case transformed from tragedy into legal reckoning. But turning outrage into a courtroom case is never simple. The story that was once told in fragments now needed to be woven together. Law enforcement, lawyers, witnesses, all with competing versions of what Amya's last moments meant, and what the driver's responsibility truly was. The arrest of Alexandria Larkin on May 17, 2025 marked the pivot of the narrative. From the moment she was taken into custody, the question shifted. How much could be proven beyond reasonable doubt? Prosecutors asserted that the surveillance video, witness statements, medical evidence all pointed toward culpability. They described a vehicle moving forward without clear braking, a driver who, critics say, should have seen Amya. The charge: first-degree vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of an accident. This was no longer a dispute about negligence, it was about accountability. From Alexandria's side, the defense contended that the evidence was murkier, that uncertainties in lighting, perception, reaction time could create reasonable doubt. They argued environmental conditions, visibility, that the driver might not have seen Amya in time to avoid the collision, that there was no intention, no malice. In court filings, the prosecution laid out the chain of evidence: phone location pings, positions of vehicles, the timing of Amya's movements, the path of the SUV. Medical reports detailed injuries consistent with being struck then dragged, showing that Amya was in front of the vehicle for a sustained moment, too long for a mere brush or incidental contact. Witnesses who originally said they didn't recognize who was driving later admitted they believed Alexandria was behind the wheel. The vehicle's behavior, the trajectory, the lack of obvious braking, all became crucible points for the prosecution's case. Meanwhile, the defense insisted that what people saw in hindsight may not reflect what could be perceived in the moment. They questioned whether the surveillance video had blind spots, whether the vehicle's front lights, shadows, traffic signals could distort distance. They emphasized that to convict, it was not enough to believe wrongdoing. The jury must believe beyond reasonable doubt that Alexandria saw Amya, realized she was there, could have avoided the contact but didn't, or that her behavior was so reckless as to amount to the legal threshold of first-degree vehicular homicide. As the trial preparations progressed, Amya's family watched each hearing, each pretrial motion with pain and hope entwined. The community pressed reminders that Amya was more than a headline. She was beloved, ambitious, with dreams of beauty school, loving her siblings, full of life. They demanded that the case not be reduced to technicalities, that justice include recognition of who Amya was. For them, it was never just about legal proof. It was about honoring her dignity. But by late summer 2025, public records show no final verdict had been publicly announced. The case remained in legal limbo. Motions may have been argued, evidence assessed, but no confirmed sentencing or conclusion in the public domain as of this moment. The charges against Alexandria carry serious weight. If convicted of first-degree vehicular homicide, she faces significant prison time, and the legal findings will shape not just her fate, but the precedent for similar cases involving vehicular deaths and questions of intent. The delay in verdict, while sometimes routine in serious cases, added another layer of emotional weight. To the family, the community, every day without closure felt like a small betrayal. Emotional testimonies were given, video evidence replayed in court, experts called for and cross-examined. The prosecution tried to bridge fragments into a narrative of responsibility. The defense tried to open gaps, insist on doubt. Outside the courtroom, the memory of Amya continued to ripple. Social media posts, memorials, fundraisers for her funeral and for her family. Vigils where her siblings spoke, where friends shared stories of her laughter, of her plans, of the way she made ordinary moments feel extraordinary. Amya, in death, became more visible than she had ever been in life, not by choice, but by fate. The injustice people feared was not just in how she died, but in how easily the truth could be blurred by distance, by inertia, by reluctance to admit what trust has failed to protect. The legacy of this case, as it stands now, is unresolved. We do not yet know how the jury will interpret visibility, reaction, intent. We do not yet know how the judge will weigh those medical forensics, those witness accounts, those recordings. The possibility exists that Alexandria may be convicted. The possibility also exists that reasonable doubt could lead to acquittal or lesser charge. Regardless, the trial has already forced society to examine what friendship means when someone is in danger, what accountability means when someone is trusted, what justice means when the evidence is messy and deeply human. In the end, Amya's story is a reminder. Tragedy often comes in moments we believe are safe. Laughter often masks unease. Decisions small and large, Amy's exit, stepping out, trusting someone, these can tip the scale. Her death challenges all who hear her name, to question our own assumptions, to speak when we see something wrong, to demand that justice does not settle for what's easy to believe, but pursues what's true. If you're watching this now, share this story, talk about it, let it echo. Because Amya deserves more than to be a name in a news cycle. She deserves remembrance, she deserves justice. If you found this video meaningful, leave a comment. What would you have done if you were one of the witnesses? Would you have spoken up sooner? Do you think the case will end in a guilty verdict? And if you want true crime Watch HD to continue covering cases like this, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this video so the truth stays alive.